Hi, all. Good to be back today. The title of today's program is Change is Inevitable. How do we overcome the fear of change? Well, change is inevitable. It is the only constant that there is. No matter how many times you see this video, it will not be the same video. My job, as I've told you, is to be the Sherpa guide. For those of you who really don't want to hear and to change, stay away. I'm going to hold your hand from now on and lead you through the forest. Change is not easy. And part of the reason change is not easy, but we have to accept the fact that change is a reality that we have to face. There is no choice. Change creates discomfort. And if you're not ready to accept the fact that if you're going to be successful, you're going to have to change. What does it mean? What is it all about? That's going to be up to you. One of the things I've learned, however, is that more people have viewed this video after it's been live. And for you, I recommend pencil and paper, because there are some things that you may want to write down to remember. Let's start off by being truthful. All of us want magic. It doesn't exist. And one of the things that all of us need to accept is there is no magic methodology that does not have side effects that works. There are hundreds of products out there promising you magic. I challenge you to come up with a non-medicine that will not impact upon you, that will give you what you want. If you don't change, if you're not ready to change, you can expect the same results that you've had. So let's take a look at what that's all about. The first thing I'd like to point out is that every single one of us, in some way or other, is an addict. And I'll talk more about that as we go along, because until we understand what it is that we're dealing with, we're just not going to deal. I would be very surprised if there were anyone out there looking at this who was a first-timer. All of you have tried over and over and over again to lose and keep off the weight. There are a million different methodologies. None of them have been successful. Now, first and foremost, we have a treatable medical disease, a treatable disease involving complex interactions in our lifetime, involving your brain, genetics, environment, and life experience. And based upon that definition, we have not succeeded because we have not looked at it and made it the primary issue. Hi, Rosemary. We have the inability to stop using food in a manner that causes psychological and physical behavior. Let's say that again. We do not. Yes, I know, Rosemary. I saw you on the list. Rosemary said she's a patient in the Clark office, Dr. Lebrano. Now, let me repeat that. What I'm going to say to you, you may not like hearing. It is your fault. It's not a happenstance. And you have a disease that is treatable. But you have to have a treatment. Every single diet out there, if you do the diet, it works one way or the other. I don't talk about AccuWeight because you're here because you know AccuWeight works. There is nothing out there that is comparable. There is no issue of altering of metabolism. You do the program, it works. It works if you do the program. Working the program, though, is requiring you to change. And the process of change is very difficult if you don't take it seriously. When I started, I was very lucky. I had Dr. Chu. I had lost 84 pounds in 3 months. It blew my mind. But the reason I lost the weight is because I had someone who was constantly on top of me. And I'm going to say what Dr. Chu actually said to me. When I did the program, he said to me, and he never called me anything other than Dr. Schwartz. I called him Joseph. He called me Dr. Schwartz in deference to my age. I was 30 years his senior. He said, Dr. Schwartz, you cannot be a fat weight doctor. And if we're going to do this, you're going to have to be an example. And you're going to have to do this. And I am going to monitor you as we go along. And I created a saying in my head because Dr. Chu had very little emotion involved in this. It was simply something that you had done. He was an extremely disciplined individual. Can you imagine a man who had all his education, all his degrees, all his knowledge? He also had the discipline to become the national grand champion Tai Chi Chuan, won the title in 1983, defended it successfully in 1984 and 85. To have that kind of discipline and do all of the things that he did was one of the reasons he was such a special person. And what I glean from him is what you and I have to focus on. One, change is inevitable. Two, we're going to do it again and again and again until we get it right. Because we're going to treat this as it is a disease, and it also is an addiction. We have the inability to stop using food in a manner that causes psychological and physical difficulty. We have an intense craving over which we do not have control. And even though we know, despite continuous attempts to change, despite the fact that for many of us there are adverse consequences, the change does not occur. It is an addiction. Number one, addiction changes your brain. How you think is critically important. Number two, our normal drives are altered by the fact that in order to satisfy the addiction, we change our behaviors and we get reward of ourself regardless of the consequences. And the attempt to get that reward changes the way we think and changes the way we behave. Therefore, it changes our learning and it changes our motivation. To make sure I'm very clear, I've done something that I usually don't do. I'm usually very spontaneous. But this is important enough for us to address. Addiction is a mental disease that involves the reward participation in your brain. In other words, anything that feels good can become an addiction. Anything that feels good can become an addiction. In this case, we have directed that, and you've heard me often talk about that almost immediately within the first few hours of life, you craved nurturance, you fussed, and you were rewarded with food. And so within the first few hours of your life, you learned that if you need comfort, you could turn to food and food would comfort you. Now, how can you tell if it's a problem? Number one, you can't stop doing it. You do it over and over and over again. And every time you say, I will not do it again, you break down and you do it again. Number two, you can't stop thinking about it. You think about it all the time. You try to push it away, and there it is. There's that voice that we talk about in the back of your head. I want. Yoo-hoo. I want. Yoo-hoo. I want. And that voice talks to you and talks to you and talks to you until you got it. You give in or break down. Now, number three, you have trouble controlling your emotion and managing it. Now, one of the things, and in our society it's even more difficult, you become more sensitive to the stresses and pressures. And so it alters your behavior. And it alters the way you feel about things. Another thing that's interesting, those of you who are overweight have some of it. Those of you who are in the really obese range have it in a more intense level. And that is, you have less and less awareness and sensitivity to the consequences. By the way, one of the things I learned as I was preparing this is that it's interesting when you are able to cure your addiction, it makes it easier to never become addicted again. Your awareness of your ability to control, your ability to take charge, your ability to deal, teaches you internally and mentally the ability to handle the future better. Now, I have some, and you can play this for yourself later because it will be repeated. This will help you understand whether you have an addiction or not. And any one of these questions are meaningful, and the more questions that you answer, and they're all yes or no, the more intense it is. Ready? Have you ever felt you were in a position where you should cut down? Have people ever criticized you for how you are eating? 3, have you ever felt bad about your eating? 4, have you ever eaten in the morning to feel better? 5, have you ever thought about cutting down? And 6, have people criticized you and tell you you ought to cut down? If you answered yes to any of these questions, and the more questions you answered yes to, it says you're an addict. What it says is that you've learned behaviors over a long period of time. You've incorporated those behaviors because to deal with the stresses and pressures of life, to reward yourself, to give yourself comfort, you've fallen into a pattern of behavior that has caused you to lose weight. And there are short periods of time where you've been able to control it, maybe by doing a diet. You lost the weight, but it never sticks. And it doesn't stick because of the fact that you're not getting at the cause. You're just dealing with the symptom. Now, here is what is important. The title of this presentation is the fact that you have to conquer the fear and accept the fear that you need to change. But here is where I believe we have simplified the situation. There's no doubt in my mind, you could go to therapy and you can work on all of the issues that cause you to run, to escape, to change your behavior. And when you've uncovered all of those triggers, you now will have the tools to deal with it. And that's wonderful. I have nothing against it. It takes a long time. It's very difficult. The insights are wonderful. But none of it will be helpful if one piece is missing. And the piece that's missing is you need to change. And you need to accept the fact that change is uncomfortable. You're used to doing something in a particular kind of way. And that's why I've said very often, I love the parable of the person who gets up in the morning, takes care of their needs, goes out of the house, turns left, and trips. They fall, they brush themselves off, and they walk. The same thing happens the second morning, except this time when they turn left and walk and trip, they hurt themselves a little bit more. They brush themselves off, they go on their way. And this continues on and on with the pain and the discomfort of tripping and hurting themselves gets to a point where their awareness of the fact that they have a choice. And they walk out of the house, and instead of turning left, they walk down a different street. Destination is still the same, but they're going to get there in a different manner. You have to change. Do you want to change? I doubt it. You're very comfortable in doing it the way you're doing it. Why would you want to change? And the reason you want to change is because doing it your way isn't working. Now, one of the things that I said a little while ago is that you're going to have to do it again and again and again and again. You're going to have to do it as many times with conscious awareness that you're going to have to change. And since change is inevitable, think about the fact that you're afraid of the inevitable. And part of the reason that you feel that is because you feel helpless and powerless. You don't feel good about the fact because you don't understand that even though change is inevitable, it doesn't mean you have to give up control. Powerlessness and helplessness and the feeling that you have no control is extremely problematic. I've lived this way always. Therefore, I'm going to continue to live this way. And how do you feel? I don't feel good. But I get my momentary reward. And it's in that process of the reward that I alter all of my behaviors. Rosemary has a question. Rosemary, I'm going to answer your questions because I'm doing all of that. And relax. We have the answers to everything. But right now, your question is personal, and let's deal with what we have to deal with first. Okay? So one of the things you're going to do, Rosemary, is you're going to call 973-243-0777. And when machine is answered, you're going to say, "This is Rosemary. Here is my number. Please call." That's all you need to say. "Dr. Schwartz, this is Rosemary. Here is my number, and we will talk." And that talk is part of why you signed up for AccuWeight. Because all of the things that we have to deal with, this is a machine. This body of ours is a machine. It's a thoughtful machine, but it does not tell us how to operate. And when we fix the method of operation, the machine works more efficiently. Just as there are certain surgeries now because there's robots, and the robots, they don't work by themselves. The doctor works the robot. The doctor works the robot. And because the robot doesn't have those little tiny tremors, it can do things more precisely, but it doesn't know how without the doctor operating the robot. Our job is to learn how to deal as though it's a robot, but we are controlling that robot. Now, let's back up again. You have to accept the fact that you must change. The first thing is to accept the fact that if you continue to do it again and again and again, the way you've always done it, nothing is going to change. The fact is that it is your fault. And the fault is that your fear of change, your discomfort of change, because you give yourself rewards. The rewards give us momentary comfort. And so sometimes we increase the level of reward. In this case, it's our addiction to the comfort that food gives us. And some of us are more intense with that than others. And when you think of changing that, if you're going to take my reward away, I'm going to have to face whatever it is. And it makes no difference what it is. You're going to have to face it. Now, the fear is that if you face it, you will not have reward and it will be uncomfortable. How often have you been in situations and comfort and circumstances where you were uncomfortable? How about not going to a particular place because there are people there that make you uncomfortable? And even though it would be good for you to go there, you don't go there because you don't want to deal with the discomfort. So you accept the fact that you're not going to get what you really want, but in the process, you're rewarding yourself because you're avoiding discomfort. The truth is, discomfort is irrelevant. And the reason it's irrelevant is something I've tried to teach you time and time again. Let's take AccuWeight. There are people there who criticize the program. And if you really had the opportunity to press them, they couldn't tell you specifically why they are criticizing you. I think the program is stupid because you're eating nothing and you're starving. Okay. That's your opinion. Now, I'm Dr. Schwartz, and I'm saying to you, how do you know that what you just said, and I'll never get that opportunity, how do you know what you just said is correct? And the answer is, you don't know. because you don't know the underlying issues involved. So therefore, your opinion becomes the truth. And my opinion, which is irrelevant, is wrong because yours is right. And if yours is right, and it is for you, without any information, it's yours, it's right for you, it's not right for me. And therefore I am wrong, and you will stick to that. And so the advice that I've always given is, I'm not going to argue with you. Whatever your underlying issue is without the information, the fact that I'm on the program and I am doing it, somehow or other, that's what's upsetting you. Not the program, the fact that I am doing it and you think not. And so you're going to come up with a million different reasons why. And if I start to argue with you, the argument can go on forever. I'm going to tell you the truth. If you criticize me, recognizing what I just said, here's how I'm going to answer you. Thank you. It makes me feel really good that you cared enough to share your concerns so that I would be aware of them. That makes me feel good that you risked sharing with me your concerns. Now, that's the absolute truth. And I don't know what your concerns are. Oh, I think you're going to get sick. I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. Those are your concerns. But you can't back them up. And I know that, but you're not even thinking that. You're reacting to something within inside yourself of which you have no idea. The fact that you share your concern with me, even though it has more to do with you than it has to me, I'm going to thank you. Why shouldn't I? I might even think about it. Is it going to cause this kind of problem? Is it going to that kind of problem? I'll certainly think about it. But then, if we were in a neutral environment, I'd ask you, for example, the patient who did the program, and every single week, the person who did the program took extensive blood tests. At the end of 10 weeks, the person had lost significant weight, over 30 pounds, and the blood tests were absolutely impeccable. Now, what does that say to you? It says you still think the program is whatever you think it is, but I have evidence here that says whatever it is you're thinking, I'm not sure why you're thinking it, doesn't apply. I have actual evidence. We've been in business for 25 plus years. The program is over 1,000 years old. Now, change is inevitable. Change is inevitable. We have to be aware of the fact that we have to change, that change is going to be uncomfortable, and we have to recognize that when we change and we are uncomfortable, we're also giving up the way in which we have been rewarding ourselves, because the reward has changed our thinking, because we want the reward because we know that the reward is going to make us feel comfortable. So we begin to rationalize and give reasons why we should get the reward to feel comfortable. And nothing changes other than the fact that it becomes more intense and more problematic. I need to teach you. I need to hold your hand. We need to interact and recognize that there's going to be a period of discomfort. The world is not going to come to an end. The house is not going to collapse. No one is going to get sick because of it. You're going to be uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel good when you are uncomfortable. But when you learn to deal with it, that in itself becomes a reward. You see, part of the issue of addiction is the feeling of powerlessness and helplessness in which you seek reward. And it compounds itself because the reward becomes the thing in itself. There is no one out there, and including me, who doesn't feel terrified when we're not in control. I told you many, many, many years ago of driving in an automobile, and I won't go through the full story, on a 10-lane highway, 5 lanes each way, brand new road, very few people using it, on an autumn day. And the passengers in my car, who were, and I was young in those days, in my 20s, it was a convertible, they egged me on to go faster and faster and faster. And it was exhilarating. When suddenly, far in the distance ahead, I saw flashing lights. And this was in one of the before power brakes. And so I touched the brake and nothing happened. And I touched the brake and nothing happened. And I touched the brake and nothing happened, because at that speed in those days, in those cars, the brakes would not hold. And then we hit a patch of ice. And the distance between us and those flashing lights, which dawned on me at that point there was an accident up there, were coming closer and closer and closer. And when we hit that patch, remember, my foot was no longer on the accelerator. So the car inertia was beginning by itself to slow down. And we finally stopped about 40 yards from that accident. I will never permit myself to repeat that terror. I was out of control. There was nothing I could do about it. I felt helpless. But it taught me a lesson. And one of the ways, by the way, that I apply that lesson now, especially on the roads today, where people are, I don't know how to describe them, It could be a 55-mile-an-hour zone, and they're going 80. I hold myself to a maximum of 8 miles over the speed limit. And someone said to me, it's better to be a little late down here than a little early up there. That's what I'm talking about. Let's learn how. Let's apply the how. And that's why I said to Rosemary a little while ago, I'm not going to answer your question now. It's personal. A general question I might have answered, but it's personal. And I'm going to help you address it because that's what AccuWeight is all about. Ask for help. If you knew the answer, you wouldn't be sitting here listening to me. That's why I say to you, I'm not your friend. You pay me to be your Sherpa guide, to lead you, to teach you. You don't need another friend. Because, as I told you, my friend said to me, he thinks I'm stupid doing this. Now, I'm not going to get into what was inside his head. He didn't know why I was stupid. He just felt he was stupid because my doing the program made him uncomfortable. And he was telling me actually about his discomfort because he didn't know why what I was doing was stupid. One of the reasons Alcoholics Anonymous is such an incredible program is because they admit the truth. I am an alcoholic. I am an addict. I am powerless and helpless, and therefore I need support. I need help. I need methodology. I'm not asking you to go to meetings. I'm asking you to seek help. And one of the disadvantages of this process is we can't interact here. Years ago, I used to do this kind of thing in the office every Thursday night. I'd have 30, 40 people, and we would interact, and people would come back, and there was learning and change occurred. An aside, please, the number, Rosemary, 973-243-0777. Now, change is inevitable, but change does not feel uncomfortable when you get rid of the fear and understand, despite all your fear and you're afraid of change, nothing is ever the same. Everything changes, and everything changes all the time. Name me one thing that doesn't change. And when you say do it again and again and again, the slight imperfections, it's not the same. If nothing more, that you've done it already, so it's less strange. Ask questions. Continue tuning in. Play this video in the middle of the week. Write down some of the questions. Share those questions. Let's grow and move on together, recognizing that the answers are there. For me, I told you, In 3 months, I lost 84 pounds, but that's not the key. The key is that for over 20 years, I've kept off those 84 pounds. And I don't diet. I don't deprive myself. I've learned how to eat, which is what part of the process is. I'm going to, if I can, answer some questions. Now, question number 1. Can I use oat milk? We have a number of plant-based options, choices. If you go to accurate.com/plant milk, because they're all called milk, oat milk, rice milk, soy milk, they're all called milk. So I don't want to deal with the word milk. It's plant-based. It doesn't come from cows, but it requires, if you're going to do it properly, to supplement it. And so if you go to accurate.com/plant milk, the supplements will be there. And if you add the supplements, then the effect of your plant alternative will be the same as if you were using cow's milk or organic milk or lactose-free milk or goat milk. We have the answers. We want you to lose weight. And the reason we want you to lose weight is because that's what gives us pleasure. That's what we're set up for, to help you help yourself, to teach you. Next question. How much avocado can I have and how do I count it? 1, if you choose, avocado is a fruit. And you are allowed 2 fruits. So therefore, an avocado is a fruit. But avocado is one of those things that you can also use as a vegetable. So therefore, if you use it as a vegetable, use it by weight, and now you can have avocado as a fruit or avocado as a vegetable. I have not had a bowel movement in a week. Can I use a laxative? Now, first and foremost, understand that having a bowel movement is the evacuation of garbage. We are not living in a normal garbage environment. And the garbage is developed by food that is not used and by fiber that is not digested. And since we are on Accurate, the amount of fiber that is being created in the process of digestion is much less than normal. So therefore, not going and having a bowel movement is not unexpected. The fact that this person has not gone for a week, number 1, the question I would ask is, how much water are they drinking? And let's look at what they've been eating. On a 1-shot basis, I have no problem at all with them taking a laxative, because whatever garbage has been accumulated will be evacuated. And they are to make sure, and asking me a question such as this, but on a more personal basis, because the answer may have to be refined just slightly. Okay? So the answer is yes, you may use a laxative. Are beets allowed? Beets are extremely healthy. They are a vegetable. One of the greatest things about beets is they cause the body's use and formation of nitrous oxide to increase. So they help with circulation, they help with blood pressure. There are all kinds of positive things. Beets can be used without question. Answer again, part of the 1.5 pounds of vegetables on a vegetable day. Do tomatoes count on my fruit as veggies or veggie? Now, tomato is really a fruit, but I would not, maybe you would, but I certainly would not use tomato in my fruit salad. So use tomato as a vegetable, and use tomato as you would any other vegetable. In my opinion, though, I would not maximize the amount of tomato that I use, even though tomatoes are delicious, because of the amount of lectin that is produced when you have tomatoes. I want to thank you for listening. Please, as Rosemary did, I will answer any and all of your questions. And we're going to do it again and again and again. I have more to say about the specifics of how we change when I see you soon. Thank you for being here. Hope to see you soon. And hopefully I'll see less of you.